Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1241B, and today's date is March 29th, 2017, and the title of the episode is, While Americans Were Sleeping, the Surveillance State is Now Almost Complete. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, former Obama Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense Evelyn Farkas, well, she made some stunning admissions during an interview with MSNBC's Mika Brzezinski. While discussing the mad scramble by the Obama administration to collect and preserve intelligence on alleged Russian election hacking before Obama left office, it appears that Farkas, well, she accidentally implicated the Obama White House in the surveillance of Trump's campaign staff. Now, she went on to say that if they found out how we knew what we knew about the Trump staff dealing with Russians, they would try to compromise those sources and methods, meaning we would no longer have access to that intelligence. Farkas effectively corroborated a New York Times article from early March, which cited former American officials as their anonymous source regarding efforts to leak this surveillance on the Trump team to Democrats across Washington, D.C. She said, "I became very worried because not enough was coming out into the open, and I knew that there was more. We have very good intelligence on Russia, so then I had to talk to some of the former colleagues, and I knew they were trying to get this information out to the Hill, which is Congress, and that's why we had the leaking. So they surveilled Trump's campaign, then they leaked the information out there, and they unmasked certain individuals. So in other words, the Obama administration was concerned about spoliation of evidence gathered through various sources and methods of surveillance. So a plan was hatched to leak this information to Congress." I mean, right there and then, she just admitted to it. Now, Judge Napilatano, he was kicked off Fox News because he mentioned that he had sources that Obama got the information from GCHQ, and of course, Fox looked at this and GCHQ said absolutely not. And of course, they let the head of GCHQ go, where he left because of family reasons. And right now he's back on, and he is refusing to change his story. He stood by his claim about spying on Trump, that Obama went to GCHQ, and they provided him the information, and he's not budging from that. So his sources are still telling him, and he still believes that, yes, this is how it happened. And he must have some good sources if he's not budging on it. We see that Sessions is out there, and he's pushing the idea that cities will not be getting funding if they are taking in illegal immigrants. And Sessions is saying that we're going to be holding back these funds. And we can see already that states are already fighting back. New York, well, they are fighting back. New York City Council Speaker Melissa Mark Veravirto, she's saying that we're going to become this administration's worst nightmare. California Senate Leader Kevin DeLeon called Sessions' message nothing short of blackmail. Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel doubled down on his own promise that Chicago will continue to welcome immigrants. Now, basically, there's $27 billion in federal funding that's at play right now, and this will affect some of these cities. Miami already reversed their sanctuary city policy. Other states are also reversing it, but there are still some states that are holding out, saying that we're going to accept illegals, and we'll have to see how this whole thing plays out. Now, Congress right now is poised to basically obliterate broadband privacy. Now, privacy advocates are out there, and they are urging Americans to call their elected officials, warning that there are only 24 hours left to save online privacy rules before the U.S. House of Representatives votes on a measure that would allow major telecom companies to collect user data and auction it off to the highest bidder. Well, first of all, they're already collecting the data. The only thing they can't do right now is sell it. And we can see right now that SJ Resolution 34, a Congressional Review Act resolution to repeal the Federal Communications Commission's privacy provisions implemented under Obama, which requires that the providers such as Comcast, AT&T, Verizon get users' permission before collecting or selling sensitive data. 50 Republican senators voted to advance the resolution this week. And this is ridiculous because this is your private information. They have no right to it. And we can see right now that once they do this, well, guess what? They know a lot about you. They already know a lot about you. They're going to know even more through legal channels. The other way is through illegal channels. Mohammed Saad Khan at The Next Web explained how a rollback of privacy rules could usher in a new wave of cyber attacks. Considering what is at stake here and how much data the ISPs already have on us, it will not come as a surprise if in the long run the number of cyber attacks increase by leaps and bounds. Monitoring activities and data theft will rise significantly, he said, as if they were already not a menace. With gadgets, households, and even cars being connected to the internet as part of the Internet of Things, it is not that hard to imagine how deadly a cyber attack could possibly be if things turn for the worst. Now, once they have this information, they understand, what your purchases are, what your surfing habits are, what your banking habits are, and this can be sold to various companies. This information can be used. And what we're seeing right now is this is just another step to a complete surveillance state. And our nation has turned into a surveillance state while most of the people have been sleeping, and it's almost complete. I mean, right now, biometrics are becoming so advanced, they're able to measure the spacing between your eyes, the shapes of your ears, and other things about and peculiarities about your face. But these differences, well, they don't matter as long as they can be cataloged. All the states pretty much have real ID, and we talked about this in depth, and these driver's licenses are all linked into a central database and pass through the fusion centers and police departments at local, state, national level. Here's an excerpt from the passport page of the State Department of January 12, 2016. The Department of Homeland Security announced Friday that Real ID compliance identification, such as a passport or driver's license from Real ID compliant state, will not be required to fly domestically until 2018. So you will need this new ID to fly inside the country. And we can see right now, they will basically have all information about you. I mean, with your GPS, they'll know exactly where you are, which they know now. When you go in to purchase anything at the store, well, guess what? The database will understand that you're making a purchase because all your private information will be sold and will be collected. The camera records that are taking your picture in this area will be sent up to the database. The images then will be tied in to the real-time purchase of the receipt. Your vehicle will be known and where it is, because right now all the new vehicles have this GPS device on there. And insurance companies are using these devices to see if you go through red lights, if you're driving too fast, and they'll be adjusting your insurance. And we can see right now the surveillance state right now is upon us. Everything that we've been talking about for all these past couple of years, here it is. And by 2018, it's complete. And the deep state, well, they have full control. They know your every move. They know what you're doing. Privacy is out the window. And that's one of the things that the Founding Fathers were sticklers about, having privacy. So the government doesn't know what you're doing. It's none of their business. But today we can see that they know everything that we're doing, legally and illegally. Now, a couple of days ago, there were protests inside of Russia, and we know that the United States was saying that you need to release these individuals that were arrested for the protests. We know that George Soros and others were involved in doing this, trying to create some type of movement inside of Russia. And what's very interesting about this is that it had no chances of working, because what we see from Gallup is that the popularity of President Putin remains stable at more than 80%. So trying to create these protests to say that, Putin is not our leader, most of the country is behind him. Now, the United States government central bankers, they tried to do this out in Syria with Assad, and he had about 80% of the people where they're saying, no, we want Assad, and it didn't work there either. And again, if you have the people who are for their leader, the protests will not work. And we can see that it is not working. Now, American Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, she announced Monday that her country and a list of nearly 40 others would not participate in a meeting to pass an international nuclear weapons ban, calling the proposal naive and warning that bad actors like North Korea would never take advantage of it. Now, first of all, North Korea tried to speak to the Obama administration. North Korea tried to speak to the Trump administration, actually to you, Nikki Haley, and they said they want nothing to do with North Korea. Now, shouldn't we start talking to these nations if they're extending a hand and saying we would like to talk about peace instead of saying, no, you'll do it our way or that is it? Yes, if you take that approach, guess what? Other nations will not join in, and we will not reduce nuclear weapons. So we need to take the approach where we're looking for democracy, we're looking for peace, we're looking to have talks. And if a country wants to have a talk, I think we should start there. And of course, if it doesn't work out, then we move, instead of giving these countries an ultimatum, because the reason we're giving them an ultimatum is because there's an agenda behind all of this. That is the major problem. Remember, the central bank, those in the deep state, they have a different agenda. Now, out in North Korea, the corporate media and governments in South Korea are all out there saying that North Korea, they're getting ready to test another nuclear weapon. They have satellite imagery. Of course, it's kind of blurred. It's not very detailed, and it's not sharp and crisp. And we know that they have the HD cameras, and we've seen that they can zoom in right up to a license plate. But here, they don't have that. And of course, they label it in Photoshop, telling you what everything is. Now, according to the Johns Hopkins University website, North Korea knows when commercial satellites are passing overhead, and they typically try to avoid activities during that time. But from these photographs, we can tell that they're preparing to do something. Now again, this is all part of the agenda. They're building this up. They're trying to convince the world that North Korea is a threat to the rest of the world. And again, we're only going by what the corporate media says. We're only going by what the neocons say. We're only going by what these individuals say. Actually, the last time they exploded a nuclear weapon underground, Japan went out and they tried to look for radiation indicators, and there were none. But of course, there was an earthquake, so they blamed it on a nuclear weapon. Maybe it was just an earthquake. And ever since then, every missile that they fire off, even a satellite that they launched, they said, well, that satellite could be used to carry a nuclear weapon. If you notice, they continually keep the propaganda going, because eventually what they want to do is they want to go into North Korea. They want North Korea. They want to start a war. And they know if they go into North Korea, this will happen. And they're trying to provoke North Korea. This is how they work. They do it very slowly, very methodically, to make it look like the United States, and I'm not talking about the people of the United States, I'm talking about the neocons, the deep state, that they're not responsible for what is happening. They're totally responsible because they give countries ultimatums. Do it our way, or that's it, we're not talking. They did it in Ukraine to the southeastern people. Here's our peace terms. Surrender. They did it in Syria. Here's our terms to Assad. Surrender. That's it. That's what they usually do. Now we see that Russia and Iran, they're planning to expand economic cooperation, and this is through their oil and gas industry. And Russia sees a great potential for enhanced oil and gas industry cooperation. And companies in Russia have reached a number of important agreements concerning the development of major hydrocarbon deposits in Iran. And we can see already that Russia and Iran, they're getting closer and closer together. They're working together. And we can see that the United States is completely left out of what is going on in Iran. Now, the P5+1 deal, that was to make sure that Iran never got a nuclear weapon. Now, they were never creating a nuclear weapon. Yes, they do have nuclear power plants, but they wanted to make sure that they never got a nuclear weapon. Because if you notice, the United States government central bankers, they like to go into those countries that are not a nuclear power. And if you look around the Middle East, most of these countries are not a nuclear power, that they went in there, they had regime change, and they took it over. And we can see right now the P5+1 deal, that was a complete way of making sure that they would never become a nuclear power. Now, going back in time in Ukraine, when the coup d'etat was taking place, and Victoria Nuland put Yatsenyuk in power, I don't know if you remember him, we talked about him quite a bit, working for the central banks. Well, today, it looks like there is an arrest warrant out for him. And he faces a Russian arrest warrant in addition to the international arrest warrant that has been active against him since February 21st. And this is according to reports on filings from a town in southern Russia. And the warrant was issued due to Yatsenyuk's alleged participation in an armed group fighting against Russian troops in Chechnya in the 90s. So they're looking for him right now. We see that Russia is calling for a UNSC briefing over the deadly bombing in Mosul. And what's very interesting about all of this, I mean, we look at London, and we had a terror attack there, and people, are holding candles, and they're all outraged at terror. But here in Mosul, we have the coalition forces bombing families, destroying lives, and nobody reacts to it. Nobody is holding candles. I mean, the U.S. is out there saying, well, with our new methods, this is going to happen. So, 200 people died, and there's no reaction whatsoever, which is completely amazing. And right now, we can see that, watchdog groups and others, they're looking at the situation saying, we need an investigation of what happened here. Now, out in Syria, we understand that Israel, a couple days ago, flew into Syria, bombed areas in Palmyra, helping out the Islamic State and other terrorist groups. And Syria has issued a very serious warning to Israel. And it quite clearly stated that if Israel attacks Syria again, Syria will respond with deadly force, including the use of SCUD missiles against Israeli targets. Now, is this what they want? Do they want Syria to react? Because this has been going on for quite a while, where Israel flew into Syria, attacked some area, flew back out. Syria never really responded. If Syria goes ahead and uses their SCUD missile system, which is not really an advanced missile system from the start here, is this what Israel wants? Is this what the neocons want? Because this will allow the war to begin. So we need to be very careful of what's going on here, because we can see right now this could be a ruse to get Syria to do something. Now, remember when I talk about poking and trying to get other countries to do something? This could be one of those times. So we're going to have to see now if Israel does decide to fly into this area once again and bomb in Syria. We're going to have to watch this very closely, because this could kick off something huge. And we can see this is what the neocons, the deep state, the central banks want. They want war to start. And it doesn't matter where it is. It doesn't matter if it starts in Syria, because that will drag in Russia, which will then drag in China, which will then bring in North Korea, which will then bring in Iran. And you can see how this plays out, because all the players are pretty much the same. And we can see right now the Fed has already given the signal, which we talked about in the financial section, where they're already set. They're bringing down the economy. There's no two ways to look at this. The pattern is exactly the same as back in prior to 2008. And when 2008 came, everything came to a crashing halt. They're prepared and ready to do the same thing. They are doing the same thing. So they're all ready to go. And during this whole process and during this period of time, they will need war to start. Why do they need war? Well, first of all, it covers up the entire economic problem. because it's much easier to say to a population that's at war, you need to sacrifice. The reason why all this is happening, it's not because of the central bank. It's because of maybe Trump, and then North Korea cyber attacked us, or Russia cyber attacked us. We're in war, so we have, the economy that is completely imploding on itself. Everyone needs to sacrifice. We're going to have to declare martial law. We're going to have to put police all over the place. We're going to have to basically control the entire country because people are going hungry. And this is all in preparation to move us into a third world country, because eventually what's going to happen is the United States most likely will not be the reserve currency of the world. And again, there's no guarantee that the United States will win the war. And I can see right now how many people really want to fight for the central bankers. Now, of course, they're going to implement the draft. Of course, they're going to push this very hard. And we can see right now the central bankers don't care who wins, because they have no allegiance to a country, to a group, to a religion. They have allegiance to themselves. So it doesn't matter to them as long as they're in control of the monetary system. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.